For the City of Charleston Citizen Police Advisory Council meeting. I'd like to welcome everybody. Thank you all for coming. Great participation here. So I appreciate that. Jill, if you would do the roll call, please.
Yep. Okay. Councilmember Twan Fielding.
I'm here.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Councilmember Doris Grant.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Jerome Harris.
Present.
Thank you. Councilmember Kobe Holyfield.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Thomas Hummel.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Jamie Kahn.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Joseph Cross. Councilmember Philip Lucier.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Sarah Mack.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Harrison McIver. Councilmember David Sonier.
Here.
Thank you. Councilmember Paul Tamburino.
Here.
Thank you. And Councilmember Liliana Taylor. And finally, Councilmember Jean Thomas. Here. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jill. I don't believe any citizens have signed up to either with written comments or to speak at the meeting. Is anybody online that may be trying?
No, I believe everybody here is.
Okay. Perfect.
presenting.
Next up, everybody should have received a copy of the April 2024 minutes. So I'm going to put that on the table as a motion to accept it. Is there a motion to accept the minutes if published? Okay. We have
Second.
since it's published. All right. Any discussion, any corrections, any modifications? No. All in favor of accepting the April meetings? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right, we're getting moving along. Next up, we should have Chief Walker for his updates. So Chief?
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me, Paul? Can y'all hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Barely, you may
Can
need
you
to turn
talk?
the volume.
Yeah.
Let's see. I'm sorry. How about now? Am I coming through okay?
A little
Yes,
bit
good on
better.
this end.
Turn up ours. Go ahead.
Sorry about that. Well, good evening, everyone. Apologize that I couldn't be there in person. Graduation season and a couple other obligations kind of snuck up on me. But just a couple quick updates. Especially I start off with the incident we had yesterday. I don't know if everyone saw that on the news. Had an incident in the harbor with a terminal ship that came through. We ended up having to shut down the bridge and get it evacuated. Everyone did an awesome job. It's really refreshing to know that, our training and planning actually, it works. The coordination, the communication and execution all came into play yesterday to get that done in a very short amount of time. Make sure that we didn't have any casualties or injuries if that thing had collided with a bridge. So, but kudos to everyone involved, from Mount Pleasant, the Coast Guard, Consolidated Dispatch, the pilots. Everyone did a really, really good job with that yesterday. So it's just been kind of busy with like that. Second update, we got a graduation tomorrow, graduating 12 from the academy. I'll be up there. That's kind of what I got to get prepped for tomorrow. So biggest priority for us right now is the recruiting and retention piece. With this 12, we got another, I want to say 19. And Shane, please correct me if I'm off. 19 that begins next week with us. So looking really good on the recruitment front. From a vacancy of 48, kind of chop that in half with this class that'll begin next week. So that's a really, really good sign for us at the police department. Just making sure we're getting our attrition up to par. I think we have the other commanders there. I want to take an opportunity to kind of introduce and kind of talk about the restructure. The first 3 or 4 months of the administration was really dedicated to getting everything in line with the organization. We just had promotion ceremony this past Tuesday. So that went really, really well. So if I could, I think we have Deputy Chief Andre Jenkins. Deputy Chief Jenkins is the new commander over support services, which will include working hand in hand with the community-oriented policing division, central investigation, crime scenes, and with you guys in CPAC. In addition to Deputy Chief Jenkins, we also have Captain Tonette Mitchell, who you should be familiar with. She's been pretty much the face of community-oriented policing for a while as a lieutenant. She is now the captain of that unit. So we're not losing a lot of our momentum that we had. She will be staying in place. We also have Captain Patrick McLaughlin, who took over professional standards. So internal affairs, policy, training, everything that Captain Tony Cretella was doing has been inherited by Captain Pat McLaughlin. Lieutenant Eric Lights is the new lieutenant over community-oriented policing. He has a very diverse background from SWAT. He was responsible for building our leadership platform, Executive Summit, that we're currently using in our second cycle in the Professional Standards Division. Eric is the new lieutenant over community, and Lieutenant Shane Gibson. He is the commander of public affairs. He'll be taking over all our messaging, PIO, the recruiting and hiring, and pretty much running my office along with Captain Tony Cretella, which his new role is my chief of staff. So those are some of the front and center changes that really directly impact you guys, in addition to Executive Deputy Chief Jack Weiss, who's not on the call and won't be able to make it. His son is graduating as we speak. So, but he will be coming in to introduce himself formally to the group once he's back at work. So with that, I will turn it over, Paul, to like just introductions with that group. I think we should have plenty of them in the attendance in person to kind of talk firsthand.
Good evening. Like Chief Walker said, I am Deputy Andre Jenkins. I've been at the police department now for 26 years. Prior to becoming the deputy chief, I was the captain of our central investigations unit. I spent time in Team 1 as lieutenant of Team 1, and the majority of my career was spent over in Team 4 in the narcotics division. I want to let you guys know that I look forward to working with this body and continuing to make this city a safer place and this organization better. Thank you.
Thank you. Captain Mitchell.
Hello, everyone. I'm Captain Tonette Mitchell. I've been with the Charleston Police Department for 28 years. I came from being the commander for community outreach. I've worked in several different places, internal affairs, vice as an undercover officer, the CAT team, West Ashley, but I'm right here from Charleston, born and raised in Charleston, went to local high school here, came back in 1996, actually, graduated from college in 95, came back in 1996 to the Charleston Police Department and been here since then. So I'm glad to work with you guys. I've met some of you already through Citizens Academy and other meetings that I've been to. So I'm here for you for anything that you need, and we're ready to work. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Captain McLaughlin.
It's okay, I'll do it from back here versus trying to get all the way front. Patrick McLaughlin, been with the department for 22 years. Before this, I was the Special Projects, Technology, and Grants Lieutenant, which had a lot to do with the body-worn cameras, other technology that we have, as well as working on the different grants. Before that, I was over Team 1. I was over, I'm sorry, not Team 1, Team 2 and Team 5. I spent a large portion of my career in Team 1. That's why it hops to mind so quickly. I also did a stint as the accreditation manager when I was a sergeant. So very familiar with policies, procedures, and that aspect. South Carolina boy, came down here for college, never left. And I will do my best to be Tony 2.0.
Okay, and let me see. Lieutenant Gibson, you're up.
I'll follow the lead from Captain over here. Hello, everyone. I'm Anthony Gibson. I'm the lieutenant of the newly formed Public Affairs. So I oversee the public information team, which I formerly came from when I was the PIO not too long ago. Recruitment and retention, which I was also the recruitment and retention supervisor from 2020 until earlier last year. Grant coordination and liaison with dispatch. So outside of this particular office, my skill set I've learned over the years goes with research and data implementation and evidence-based policing. So I'm a National Institute of Justice lead scholar. I'm also a research fellow with the National Policing Institute and the Police Staffing Observatory. And I'm also the co-chair of the American Society of Evidence-Based Policing. So I've really built sort of my career trajectory around making or getting rid of opinions and really implementing data and informed decisions into what we're doing. And I credit that to a lot to what I'm doing here. And I'm hoping that it blends into what you want as well.
Lieutenant Kamard, we're not going to leave you out, so we're going to let you go ahead and just introduce yourself.
Lieutenant Kamar, I'm here today because I guess in a couple minutes, we're going to talk about the schools. I'm just going to give you a bit of an overview of our SRO unit and our SSRT unit and what they do.
And Chief, before I hand it back to you, there's one person that's not here that, I know there's a lot of new people in their roles, but I was introduced this past week to a new member of the department, non-sworn, Jerome Smalls, who's going to have a huge impact on this department. He's in charge of, it's the youth program. Bundle of energy, I'll tell you that straight up, bundle of energy, great attitude about it. I hope he keeps it past his orientation week, but he's really hit the ground running. I gave him, I'll talk about it in a little while, but actually in open house, I'd met him before, but walked up to him in open house, gave him a homework assignment. I cleared it through his boss, of course, but gave him a homework assignment. He's already answered. So great stuff. He's got a youth academy. So, you know, we as adults went through the adult academy. He's doing youth academy, starts, I think Monday, isn't it?
The 11th.
Sunday, what day?
The 11th.
The 11th, it's a Tuesday. And I've already been invited to that. He sent me the schedule. It looks pretty good. So, I mean, when you say somebody's hit the ground running and drinking from a fire hose, to walk in and take that over immediately, but just the enthusiasm. So as important as you all are, I think, you know, when we have people like that being added to the department, and that's a net new, I believe, that's an addition to the department. So that's pretty forward thinking as far as I'm concerned. You know, I think that's a great addition. So I wanted to call that out. If I had known when I made the agenda, I probably would have invited him, but he's probably out there with the kids right now because it's after school. All right, Chief, do you have anything else for us? I'm gonna take that as he's either on mute or the answer is no. Okay. He can come off when he wants. All right. Steve, are you on the line so you can go over our vacancies, please?
Yes, sir. Good evening. I don't know that much has changed since the last time around. We do have Council Member Seekings has given us a name, and we're looking to put that person up for appointment at the June council meeting. And then I believe the mayor has one high school or college age student for appointment. They're still looking for that person. And then the two other districts, I believe it's 6 and 7 or 7 and 8. We still don't have appointments for those. The mayor's office is aware of the fact that those seats are vacant, and he's looking to either get those council members to fill those vacancies or fill them himself. And I know you've written him on occasion to remind him of that as well.
Thank you. Any questions for Steve? So, told you I would talk about Jerome, right? So the homework assignment I asked him to do was to help the mayor find that high school student. And I was very targeted, and I said, I want you to reach out to the kids you see at Burke High School. All right. I didn't do that. It wasn't just a thought up. we've had a lot of high school students, college students on here. But it's not been necessarily diversity. It's not representing maybe, we want some representation in the community where not only will we have an impact from hearing from them, but it's also a good impact for them. They're bringing it back, and it's the bi-directional. So he's already told me he's got 2 or 3 candidates lined up. I'm more than willing to talk to them, and they get an opportunity to interview with the mayor, because the mayor is the one that would actually appoint them. So I think he jumped on it, and I think that's a good approach to take. The only other thing when it comes to vacancies, so if you've read your guidelines, you understand that when you're initially appointed and you're confirmed by city council, your initial term, well, the terms are 3 years, right? And per our guidelines, you can be reappointed for a second term, but we're term limited to 2 terms, 6 years. Our old guidelines, and I had the old guidelines in my hand, I didn't see the one sentence. Normally what happened is when your time was up, you dropped immediately. And I guess when they repurposed these in June of last year, they added that sentence on there, or until the role is filled. So we have 2 of our inaugural members. I mean, really the foundation and the history of CPAC, we credit mostly to Doris and Twan, because they've stayed throughout. They've mentored a lot of us along and brought our background. So their terms came up for expiration June 14th. And I've talked to both of them, and Doris has agreed, thankfully, that she's going to go ahead and stay on and serve in that role until her council member, either her council member or the mayor, if that comes to that, has somebody else appointed, or I believe it's September, whichever comes first. So she is going to continue to serve. If they've not done it by September, she said, listen, I've done my time and I don't want them to lean on me that long. So that's where we're at. And I believe Twan's, I believe, going to stay until her role is filled as well. So we've notified their council members of that. But luckily we're not going to lose that institutional knowledge yet. But I do want to say, because I don't know when their last meeting will be, I do want to, I personally want to thank you for everything you've done, Doris and Twan, in your roles, both for CPAC, but I know professionally and personally for me. So I want to thank you for everything. You want to say anything? You don't have to.
It's been a great learning experience. I'm glad I was able to be a part of this, and I know that it will continue to do great things for the department and the community. So hopefully we get some good people on to carry on this.
And you're not going far. We know we're still going to see you at most everything we do, which is makes sense. No, but I mean, you're a very important part of the community. So you everywhere. Ms. Twan, did you want to say anything?
No, I agree with everything Doris said. I do see great value in CPAC, so I would hate to leave it and not have a replacement, especially with all that we went through to get the nice full house I see on my screen. So yeah, just let me know, Paul and Steve, what needs to happen. Thanks, Paul. And you're doing a great job. Paul and Jerry, the 2 of you are doing a great job. So it's my honor to stay and help until the replacement is found.
Thank you. And for those of you that don't know, besides being 2 of the OGs, Twan was our inaugural chair and was the chair almost the entirety up until a year and a half ago. So she not only helped build this, but she took the important role of leading it for a long time, and was commended. For those of you that don't know, was commended, and they did a proclamation for city council this past year, which is a nice honor, and not a unique honor. So I'll just say that for now. So
largely because of your insistence, Paul. I will never forget that. So
I can promise you that was a tag team with Jerry. Jerry did a lot of the heavy lifting on that. So I'm not going to take the credit for it.
Many thanks to the 2 of you. I really mean that. Thank you.
Jerry?
So in 2018, first time I walked into this building, I met Juan and Doris at one of the inaugural meetings of the CPAC. It's been a bumpy ride, but for the two of them, we might not be here right now.
Absolutely. I mean, you can't minimize or overstate what they've done. Right. So incredible. Thank you. The only other piece with regard to vacancy is kind of a logistic, but it's important that you know what it is, because when your time comes, you need to be ahead of it, but also to understand what you may be seeing in the next couple of weeks. So when your term comes up, your first term comes up, you're obviously eligible for reappointment. Per our guidelines, your council member should make that proactive step of placing you back on the agenda for city council to reconfirm you. Yes, you can continue in your role until they do that, but at any moment you can be replaced because you are truly filling a vacancy at that point. You are not serving a term. So in my case, my term came up, and Jerry's, we came up June of last year. We both went through the steps. Jerry went through the mayor's office. I went through my council member and went through the steps to get put on the agenda. Neither one of us noticed that due to different reasons, the reappointments got pulled from that agenda by the mayor, just because he was doing nothing against either one of us or anybody that was up there. And we never paid attention. So I'm actually sitting in a vacant role. Jerry's sitting in a vacant role. So I can tell you that I know, I mean, I only know for me because I know what I've done. I've reached out to my city council member and told him, hey, dude, you get to do this again. Can you make it happen? So you'll see my name if you're one of these people that reads the agenda or the minutes. I'm supposed to be, I haven't seen the agenda come out yet, but I'm supposed to be on the agenda to be reappointed. Now, doesn't mean I get 3 years from now. My 3 years started, it's just reappointing me to finish this term. Okay.
Just for the minutes, I knew that we were not reappointed. We had big arguments about that.
We did. Jerry's always right.
And I said, no, we did not, because I watched city council meetings. So just for the minutes.
He's right. And I jumped all over. He's like, Jerry's right. So that's where we're at with that. So, you know, just keep that in the back of your mind as you're serving as a volunteer. Yeah, there are the little administrative things that you kind of have to pay attention to. And luckily, you've got folks that have been here a little while. You know, when you get to that point, we'll help you. Luckily, most of y'all are just brand new, so you got forever to think about that. So with that said, Twan made it, you know, one of her comments, one of the last comments is, well, it's great to see a full room. And I can promise you in my time on CPAC, that's not been the case very often. We've come to CPAC meetings even over Zoom, and a lot of our time was on Zoom, you know, for obvious reasons. We couldn't get a quorum to even conduct a business meeting. So not only for a subcommittee meeting, but we had a couple occasions where that happened, where we couldn't even hold a meeting because I'll be as honest, brutally honest as possible. There were people that are appointed here who either never showed up or just decided they wanted that for a civic right. Whatever they chose, they quit and nobody filled their roles, or they didn't tell us they quit. And we had to kind of enforce our rules of saying, you know what, you said you'd attend, you haven't attended for a year, 6 months, whatever it is. You know, we're putting it for to be removed, so you can resign. With that in mind, it's very hard to, in some cases, for some of these council members to replace people. We've got a council member who's got a vacancy that's going on 3 years, maybe 2 or 3 years. And that's why we originally changed it to where when they let it sit open for more than 30 days, you've given up your slot for your district to the mayor. And that's not always as easily filled either, because they are filling so many other committees and all these things across the city. From my perspective in dealing with the history of enrollment and participation here, I would love to see turnover. I really would. Bring in new people, new ideas. The other side of that is I hate that we're losing the institutional and historical knowledge and the turnover. And more importantly, I hate the fact that we have empty seats, that we face the potential of losing. And when you have somebody who's taken the time to learn policies or taken the time to learn the different things that we do, and they're enthusiastic and they've done the police academy. Sometimes this is just me speaking for me, I'm kind of torn. Should we lose them? You know, I'm a big fan of term limits. When if you ever get in politics, I'm a hardcore term limit guy, because it shouldn't be a career. Being on these volunteer committees shouldn't be a career either. They should change it. But with that said, I'm telling you personally, my perspective, not as a chair, but as a member of CPAC, I would like to petition the city council to change and remove that term limit. Because if you have somebody who's really eager and willing to stay, and their council member wants them to stay, or the mayor, I think based on my history with this group, I think that option should be available to them. So with that said, and you all can discuss it after I make my motion, but I'm going to make a motion that I move to request a change by the city council to the CPAC guidelines to remove the 2-term limit by eliminating the following sentence. Members may serve up to 2 consecutive terms for a total of up to 6 years of service before having to leave the council.
Since the chairman made the motion, is there a second to the motion? Is there a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Is there discussion?
I haven't thought about this hardly at all. Do we want to make it an unlimited term, or do we just want to change the number from something like 2 to 3 or 2 to 4? Because like you, I do like term limits. And I hate to see it disappear entirely.
Other comments?
I was thinking the same thing. Not that I think there's a big downside to people serving a long time on this committee, but what I would see is the risk is that not that council members would get lazy, but I think if somebody is there and they're willing to serve, then it kind of shifts the burden away from, involvement of everyone to get new blood. And you said it right up front, new blood on this and getting people involved is critical. So I don't know what the answer is, but that would be my only thing is I'd hate to have them be the default, be to strong arm someone or, cajole them to keep going. And so maybe we do put it in there consecutive terms, and maybe they have to rotate off for 1 term and then back on or something after. I don't know. I don't feel strongly about it in either direction.
Other comments?
I sort of agree with the gentleman here, but I think my recommendation would be after 2 consecutive terms, you need to come off for at least 1 year before you could come back on. And I think that's more equitable, and we can take advantage of the people that have the knowledge to keep working with us.
I have a question. I mean, who would have the authority then to request a member resign or cajole them to resign, or how would that process work?
So the way the guidelines work now is you're sitting in a term. Yes, there are measures if we need to remove somebody. Like if you want to resign tomorrow, you can resign tomorrow. You have no contractual obligation. If let's say you didn't show up and our guidelines say, a certain number of meetings, I'm not looking at it right now. I think it's 2 meetings or 2 unexcused meetings consecutive, or whatever you could do. We could, as a body, make a motion and vote to remove you. So we did actually at one point start to invoke that because we had historically had people didn't show up for a long time. Now, at the end of your 3-year term, your first one, right? So each one, then your first term, your council member has a choice, or the mayor, depending on who appointed you, has the choice to replace you with a new vacancy. They'll just go and say, listen, thank you. I've got somebody new that I want to put in. They get that validated or confirmed by city council. And then you were a 1-term person, right? Same thing for at the end. Right now, at the end of your 2nd term, you're done. You can continue till they replace you, but that can happen any day. Instead of you saying, I know I'm on a next 3-year term. Does that answer the question?
It does.
Okay.
I definitely see the gain in keeping good people on. Having served on multiple boards and currently on other boards, sometimes you get a member of that board that everybody can't wait until they term out. So in the event that we had a councilman who was, hey, get in there and stir this thing up. I want you to be a burr in their side. I want you to give Chief Walker hell every day.
and then we can't, there's no method for that person terming off. I think you're looking at it through on the good side, which is, hey, we're gonna have good people and we want good people to stay around, but
To that point on, the guidelines do have, I'll call it play nice in the sandbox
right,
rules, all right? And if someone, violated those rules, all right, and it became dysfunctional for the group, there is provision to step to that.
Yeah, and we want to weigh that. I mean, that's behavior, not opinion, right? So we want somebody to come in here who's contrary,
Sure.
right? I mean, they're not going to agree with Chief Walker, me, Jerry, you. I mean, that's the whole point of having diversity of thought, not an echo chamber, but you're right. And then, you know, by the same token, you know, you would rely on leadership of this group. Maybe go to that council member and say, listen, hey, dude, all well and good, but you don't remove yourself from being able to communicate to that council member, or even the mayor, saying, listen, I appreciate you got his terms coming up. Do me a favor. And trust me, I know the police department has those, you know, they communicate too. Yes, sir.
So, there's been two suggestions made. One, the possibility of moving it from 2 years to 3 years. Another, substituting language about rotating off after spending a year off. Is there, we can vote this up or down, or we can amend it, or, you know, table for further consideration. What's the will of the body?
My fear is you're losing two wonderful people that are extremely knowledgeable. And every meeting it comes up, we need people, we need people, we need people. That's what I've heard for a year and a half. We lose these two wonderful people that have been leaders because of a ruling, and they're still willing to help and serve. Are we hurting ourselves?
So that was, let me, real quick, and then I'm going to let Twan go. I want to answer the question. So that was I'm going to be very, very, very frank and transparent. So not only was I losing two great leaders, but I'm also losing diversity. And the recent trend from our council members in the mayor's office, not this mayor, because he's not really had a chance to appoint anybody yet. They're not appointing diversity. Okay. Nothing against, I mean, I know what I look like in a mirror. I know what some of y'all look like. They're not replacing with diversity. And that was a big concern of mine, is I'm losing two, not only, I mean, they're wonderful, colorless, right? Ageless. But the bottom line is the value that they bring from the diverse backgrounds, from their perspective. I'm looking at that, and I'm also forward thinking. This is why I came up with the motion. Yeah, I'm being very candid. Is that my fear is, are they going to be replaced? And I've actually targeted, just like I did with Jerome Smalls. You know, as the chair, I turned and said, I'm going to be very honest with you, Jerome. You know, I want a diverse kid from Burke High School. That's the message, right? We need diversity. I've sent a note to the mayor's office. Please, within your power, it's your choice. You do what you want. I want a Hispanic member. You know, we need diversity in here. And that was a big part of why I did, is not only just losing the two of them for who they are, but also what they represent to this group. So that was a lot of my thought.
So,
Twan, I think Twan had her hand up.
Twan, I'm sorry, madam.
That's okay. Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. That was my concern. You know, I did talk with our chairman regarding the term limits, and that my term has expired or is on the way to being expired. My concern is that when you look at the guidelines for which the council was established, the guidelines are to work towards improving the harmony and relationship between the community and the police department. If the diversity, or if the membership of the council does not appropriately represent the community for which the police department is serving, then how will we best be able to meet that overarching responsibility of the council? And listening to what has been battered back and forth, would you please restate the motion? Because I was starting to think maybe we're morphing to a friendly amendment to the motion that's currently on the floor. Thank you.
I'll read the motion as presented. Move to request a change by city council to the CPAC guidelines to remove the 2-year, 2-term limit by eliminating the following sentence. Members may serve up to 2 consecutive terms for a total of up to 6 years of service before having to leave the council. In essence, what we're doing is removing the 2-term limit by this language.
Thank you, sir. And the only thing I heard, and Stephen, I got a chance to communicate a little bit with Steve. I think it's 2 3-year terms, right?
That's correct. He misstated it. And Juan, if you look on your agenda, the motion was
I
written
saw
on
it.
the agenda.
Paul, is there any way that if the mayor's not appointing people fast enough or at all, or if council members aren't appointing people fast enough or at all, is there any way that we can hand them people that we think would be good? So if Tuan or Doris or you or I know of somebody to say, council member, mayor, whatever, or is there any way we as a committee can be responsible for appointing like the high school students?
I would,
Paul,
my
just take
preference, I
Paul.
mean, CPAC's a group, but I would want to stay away from that. And the reason why is I'm one person, Jerry's one person, we're all, anybody who's in a leadership role or even the group of CPAC, if we become a very homogeneous group, typically people in a homogeneous group like to have like-minded and like looking, and they really reject diversity for the most part. They want to have people I'm comfortable with. Well, us doing that, we're not going to bring in somebody who may rock the boat, that probably needs to rock it a little bit, not go overboard. I just don't think that volunteers like us should do their job for them. We hold them accountable for doing their job. And if it means going to a city council meeting, which I've actually done, and said in front of them, guys, you're not filling your vacancies. This is a challenge for us. That's televised. They've got constituents that have to hold them accountable. I understand what you're saying. I don't know that I would feel, I mean, you all can vote how you want if that's the decision. But you're asking me in my role, I wouldn't want to do that because that's their job. If they don't know their constituents, if they don't prioritize this, then my personal belief is get rid of it, right? If you're not going to do it, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean.
Yeah, Logan, go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to jump in and sorry, y'all, I'm a little late. It's Logan here in the mayor's office. We had a meeting run long in city council chambers, but appreciate the time and the discussion. Did want to just add one thing. I think to the question that was just asked. If y'all know people that are interested in serving, Paul, you've made the point that it is not a resume padding thing. This is an active deal. So if you know someone and you want to recommend them and send them our way, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. To send them our way. And now, will we accept it? Does that mean it's guaranteed? No. But if you know someone and you think you have someone reach out that's interested and you want to do that, then yes, absolutely. To the bigger picture that what you guys are talking about in terms of this motion, and I'm just kind of catching up here a little bit because again, apologies for being late. But one thing I will say is that Paul, I think you make a great point about diversity and opinion in the group. And that is really, really important and critical and different perspectives and backgrounds. One thing I'll push back on the term limits piece, and I understand that the context around this is losing 2 great members of the commission or the council that are active and good frequent participants. But to your point about diversity and opinions, I also think there's a diversity in the frequency of opinions, and whether we like it or not, the amount of time we spend on something can change the way we see it. Can change the way that we become an active participant in that. And sometimes I think that it takes a new person looking at something fresh and seeing it, and someone that doesn't know and asking, why do we do this? Why does this happen? Helping someone else learn a new way can show us things that are different. So that's just I think, the diversity of opinion has multiple facets to it that I think are important, and refreshing that diversity and getting people there. Now the bigger picture problem that you pointed out, Paul, is the vacancies and people's general interest in that. But part of that, I think, is got to be demonstrated in the conversations that we have, and finding people and making sure that, this looks like something that people want to be engaged in. And Paul, I gotta give you credit. The gentleman that you spoke with that the mayor wants to appoint, he was like, that sounds really impactful and that sounds cool. And that, to me, that is the sales type of pitch that if people see that, they're like, that's what I want to engage in, because nobody wants to waste their time. And so I think the challenge of a term limit on this thing is also the benefit of it. But the challenge to y'all then becomes, when people in the community see the council, they want to see an effective and impactful body that they can participate in. And I'm not saying it's not, I'm just saying maybe we need to market it and get that out there and show people some of the conversations y'all are having. But that would engender a lot more interest, I think. And like I said, we got a live example because Paul, you talked to a guy and told him about the stuff you're working on, and he was like, yep, I'm in, sign me up. So long rambling answer there, but just wanted to add that commentary.
So if I could, since I'm sharing at this point, we have, if there are no proposed amendments, we have a motion on the floor for the language. Doris?
Well, I'm proposing that as we introduce the motion to extend or to change the term limit, since we've identified the value of having a diverse council, can we not include that in the proposal as well?
Do you want to amend mine? Because I think yours would be a completely different, it'd be a different motion because it's a different part of the guideline.
Well, if it can't be amended, then we can introduce it as a
Separate motion. Sure, absolutely. You make any motion you want.
So see, there's no amendments on the motion as made and properly second to remove the language as it relates to the term limits. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay.
Be a nay.
So let's have a division in the house. All those in favor, please raise your hand so we can count. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Juan's got her hand up.
8 in favor? Against? 1, 2, 3. 3?
Okay.
4? Okay, the motion carries.
Right, and everyone, I want you to understand that this is just a proposal to city council. They don't have to do it. This is a recommendation. Trust me, they don't do everything we ask for. Now, Doris, I'm gonna give you the floor.
Well, I would introduce a motion that as the council has experienced the value of having a diverse membership on council, that we ask the council to try to continue to nominate folks in the community who represent the makeup of the community on the council. That they making a sort of effort to look at the community as a whole and the neighborhoods that they represent, and appoint people that reflect that. And that may need to be modified, so whoever wants to modify that, feel free to do that.
Let me try. So I think your motion is to include a sentence that encourages appointing authorities to promote diversity and reflecting the makeup of our community to enhance the value and participation in CPAC. Close enough? Or, I mean, you modify it however you want.
No, that's close.
I guess that's kind of broad.
Well, before we do that, does somebody want to second the motion?
Second.
Okay. Now we can discuss.
I'm just curious of what that like practically would look out as. I think that's kind of like a broad motion in my sense. And I don't know how it can be fulfilled. Like, what does success look like in that? Or how is that more defined? Because I think that's kind of broad. I'm just trying to narrow it down more where we can.
Well, do you start with language that addresses the value and importance of having a racially and gender diverse board? And or does that, I know that gets into a sticky mess when, as soon as you mention any protected class, I'm not sure how to, I agree that's very broad. So I'm not sure how to word it.
All right,
It'd
Twan,
be good to be broad. I don't know.
Twan, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, sir. Thank you. We have the pleasure of working with a very astute attorney in Steve Rumlin. So I think Steve understands what the intent of the motion is. And I would suggest we depend on him to draft some language that would help to meet the intent of the motion on the floor.
That's why you're the OG.
And OG.
Let me, Jamie.
Currently, the membership section reads, membership is designed to provide community representation that respects the diverse composition of the citizens of Charleston. The advisory council will strive to maintain a balance of diversity to include different races, ethnicities, religions, sexual preferences, geography, etc.
Yeah, I was gonna,
Oh, wow.
I wanted to let the discussion happen.
It's already there.
The other thing that I would say, let Jerry go, that was one of the reasons when they were forming this, why they wanted the original, the way it was laid out is each council member would appoint and then the mayor would have their selections. It wasn't until June of last year that we've got council members that just won't fill their position. Many emails, conversations you have, they just won't do it. That's when we turned it over to the mayor's office and said, okay, if you won't do it, you lost your right. We're going to give it to the mayor. He'll take your right and, do what he wants to do with it. So I think that was the intent of why you would have the different district members. You're supposed to know your community. And again, we still end up with this makeup. So I appreciate it. Yes, Ms. Sarah.
Who's here, because I'm looking at the districts that doesn't have a committee. But each one of these councilmen has a community board that they should be attending. And I find it ironic that they don't at least share with their constituents that this body exists for their benefit.
You said it perfectly.
Oh.
Preaching to the choir.
You said it. I mean, I'm just giving my opinion, but you said it perfectly. Jerry?
So, the question of racial, ethnic, gender, sexual preference, representation, on the body. One consideration might be if we look at who the department interacts with. The data, from the Internal Affairs Report, provides some information, on traffic stops and actually the contact cards, right, provide that information. So in terms of thinking about or informing what diversity means, specifically in terms of that broad language, it may mean taking a look at who is interacting with, impacted by the department in a way differently, other than the fact the population, the general population of the city is hyper segregated, and the total population, Black African-American population, is under 17%. And by that version, we're overrepresented currently on the council. So if you're thinking, and we need to think differently about that, it is important because those individuals and communities who request services from the department, and some whom need the services from the department, or perpetrators, are all important in this mix. And the guidelines do in fact say that if you're a criminal, you can't be a member of this body, by the way. So we can't have criminals on the body. But I'm just saying, in terms of thinking about diversity, the question, we need to be clear that we're talking about people with different socioeconomic, racial, gender characteristics, and that's kind of, because right now in general conversation, diversity, inclusion is hyper political. But in terms of the work that we're designed to do, we're really concerned about making certain that people get the services that they want, and the department has the best advice and the highest level of public service by virtue of the work that we do.
Would you name a District 6, 7, and 8, those councilmen? Would you name those, please?
I've got it written down. I don't know if it's the top of my head. It's, Seeking has a vacancy. I know he submitted a nominee.
Which district is he?
Jill, you've got it on your list. If not, I'll pull mine.
He's 8.
I've got it. While we look that up, if you don't mind, Captain Mitch, you're representing the police department. You've not been involved with us long enough, someone put you on the spot, Deputy Chief. But Captain Mitchell, you've been involved. I mean, you've seen CPAC, you've done community relations for a long time now. I'd love to hear your feedback.
Well, just listen to everybody speaking about that motion. My feedback is that the representation is needed. And if the people are on the board that's doing the good work and they want to continue to stay on the committee, that they should, they know what the committee is about, but representation is needed within on the committee.
Appreciate that. So to answer your question, I'm Gene. District 6 is Councilmember Gregory. District 7 is Councilmember Waring. District 8 has a vacancy, is Councilmember Seekings. He's got a candidate that's pending to go on the list. The mayor has a student opening, and he's got, now I know the nominee because I spoke to the person a while back. Because I talked to different candidates because I think it's important we tell them what our expectations are, what the work is. You set the right, guys, you don't join if you don't want to work. This is what we do. Here are expectations. That is a Black gentleman. So that's good in that perspective. Like I said, I've asked to have one of the student representatives. I mean, but that's taking somebody and asking, right? And we just have to, as a group, not be shy about doing that. Not be shy about looking around a room and saying, guys, not just among us, but to your city council member, your appointing authority, because the truth is you're supposed to communicate back up. They didn't just appoint you and you never see them again and talk to them again. You should be reporting back up and giving your observations and giving your feedback so that when we have questions like this, when we make decisions, they're not going in there. I don't know anything about that. That's your job. And so if you see there's a lack of diversity, if you see there's a lack of opinion, if you're not communicating that up, really, guys, that's something you should own as well. Jerry?
Yeah, and again, because I'm Black does not mean, and Black and old at that. Doesn't mean that I can speak for all Black people. The neighborhood I live in is diverse. Right, and my interaction and the concerns that my neighbors have about public safety is part of what I bring to these meetings as well, and that's part of our responsibility. We're not elected as city council members are, but our charge is to reflect what's going on in our communities in the broadest sense. So it may also mean that in addition to talking to our council people, we may have to extend ourselves a little bit more, going to block association meetings and paying attention to what's happening in the community in a different kind of way than we might have been before we came on this body. And that's not something that we've talked about, but it's something that we should raise up in our consciousness.
All right, all good commentary. I'm going to put an end to it. Doris, you want to continue with your motion?
No, I withdrew.
So you want to withdraw? Okay.
The language is already.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, and spent a lot of time on vacancies. I apologize, but I think it's important for us. All right.
Paul, if I can, just
yes.
before you move on, I did just want to let y'all know on those vacancies that y'all mentioned. You mentioned that we've got the mayor's appointment coming in. We've got just because we're new, and I understand that some of these have been open for a while. We wanted to give one more go at letting these members of council appoint their people. I think that I know I've seen them be notified on a few different instances on my end. I know the chief has talked to him, Paul. I think you've reached out. And so I think we've given sufficient notice at this point. So look for action on those 3 spots and the mayor's student spot in the near term. And I would expect by July. But I apologize for not knowing y'all's names as well as I should. And B, just frankly not being able to see on this little tiny camera here. But the gentleman who raised the point about recommending people, if y'all have somebody that if you have people that are interested, if you know a student that's interested, it does not hurt to send them our way, and we want to consider all options. So please feel free to connect people, and we'll connect them to Paul, and he can give them the stern talking to that he does. And we'll do that. I wanted to make that's kind of our expectation for getting these vacancies filled.
And Logan, just so you know, I mean, you were copied on the email, you've seen it, you've got a million of them. We've also got District 3 that's coming open, and we have District 12. They've been notified. I mean, it's not on the mayor's plate yet because they've got the time to fill their positions, and we're not going to say on the 30th day we're giving it over to the mayor. We're respectful of them and say, hey, we'll encourage them a couple of times. So the truth is, we actually have 2 more vacancies now. So that's added to the plate. With that said, for Logan, where we feed every one of us, if you're out in the community, if you're out doing different things, feed those. I definitely expect the police department to do that because they encounter folks all the time. And I know Chief Walker, that's his big thing. And you show up to a meeting with him and you start, raising Cain. First thing he has to tell you, get involved. You're talking about something, you want to get involved, and he'll grab names. I came to the police academy the other night, and that's, we actually got, I got to come, I gave a little speech, but in their packet already, their survey packet when they're done was a blurb about CPAC, and it said, hey, if you're interested in CPAC, go here. So they're doing their part. And sure enough, while they were supposed to be eating barbecue, I had about 4 or 5 people come up to me. I definitely want to do it. I definitely want to do it. And then I've got to go back and say, well, if you really mean it, that's fine. That's not an enrollment to me. Reach out to me. Here's my contact information. Follow through, because people get excited in the moment and then they never follow up. Well, those are people I would want anyway. I then look at, is their district open? So I explain to them, I don't know if your district's open or not, because I'm not paying attention to that. And if it's not, I can forward your name to the mayor's office. But very frankly, the Citizen Police Academy, this rotation was not the most diverse group in the world. That's not their fault, but it wasn't. And so I can tell you it wasn't getting diversity from the volunteers. Not that rules them out, because you know what? Somebody who's willing to serve is better than somebody who's not willing to serve. So Logan, I do have potentials that have come your way. The police academy, the Citizen Police Academy for us is probably the best. It's a good recruiter because they've shown the investment of putting 8 weeks in a row, and they've shown an interest, but not everybody wants to do that. And I don't, there are some folks that may, that we want, who've got a different opinion, who just don't want to go to the police academy. So we'll get those going. All right, moving on. So I gave you half of my update. So I did go to the graduation. Excellent, great group, wonderful group. So excellent showing. Joe, congratulations. You got your, he's a fellow alumnus. If you've not been, you need to go. It's not only helps you do your job here, but it shows respect for what they're doing. And we should have educated members. So it was great. And if you haven't done it in a long time and you want to fill a seat, they're doing things now that we didn't, I didn't do a couple of years ago. So I mean, it's awesome.
So Paul, just real quick, I was in that class as well. I had a conflict last Wednesday, so I didn't get to go to graduation. It was amazing. I mean, y'all have all done it before, but I really kept thinking that they were, just cherry picking the cream of the crop of the officers to come present to us. And then week after week after week, we just kept seeing, 5, 6, 10, 20 more people, and they were all top notch. I mean, super impressive at their job. So kudos to Chief Walker and the history of the department. I came away so impressed. Every day I came home and told my wife, I said, man, we don't have any concerns about our police force and the quality of people they get. So I can see why you have a hard time, not necessarily a hard time recruiting, but I can see where that's a focus, because it's not like you just walk up here and say, give me a badge and get a job. Y'all are an impressive group. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that police academy. And
the fact that what I was impressed by, and maybe you all were too, is this isn't something they're just doing as a check the box. They're beating the streets to get people to go. They make this like a command focus. I mean, and what are they getting out of it, right? They're working nights, they're having to do extra things, but so if you run into people, and if you're going around your community meetings, encourage folks to go, because the more you learn, the better it is. So yeah, I appreciate that. All right, so I did that, went to the open house. I think mostly a lot of y'all went to the open house. The turnout, when I was there probably wasn't the greatest, but it was just, it's a summer day and school's getting out and everything else. So there's a lot of competing things. So, it'd be great if the department could probably do that a couple times a year and maybe, put one of the cooler months where people are a little bit more settled in their schedule. That may have a bigger impact, but yeah, I enjoyed that and I appreciate seeing the folks that came out there for that. Met with the chief a couple times. We talked pretty frequently, but met with him and we talked about the recruiting. He's really excited about what you're bringing in. Again, one of those rare departments that demands, and has since even when I was in college, demands a college degree to be in the department. I think they're going to try to maybe loosen that up a little, but that's really their focus, to have an educated police force. We talked about it. It's kind of weird. We talked about one of the recruiting challenges. And I said to him, and I didn't know that the mayor had already brought it up, but where I live in West Ashley, there's 5 million apartment complexes going up there. We don't have the infrastructure, but apartment after apartment after apartment. And, I'm not the most liberal of folks, but I actually said, what would be great is if the city subsidized one of those, not just low income housing, but to subsidize your police force, your fire department, your city civilian workers, so that the city of Charleston is affordable. So our junior officers or people transferring don't have to live in Monk's Corner just to be able to afford to be in a police department here. And if they would take over, to me, we focus all the time, and I get it, on low income, but you have a city structure. And if you can't recruit good police officers because they can't afford to be here, that's not a trickle down effect. That's a gushing wound effect. And so I didn't, I think the mayor's actually talked about, I didn't know that at the time, but Chief Walker, we talked about that at length, and he goes, yeah, the mayor's actually brought that up. So I know that's politically, I'll actually try to get behind that, even though that's not normally something I would do. I think that's a great cause. Other than that, just basically my feedback is various efforts. I pulled back, as you all know. I'm not attending subcommittee meetings because I think those are your subcommittees. Do your thing. You don't always need, even though I'm just a member like you are, it's always when the chair of something is sitting in there, no matter what you tell people, they're still looking towards the chair for advice or what do you think and what do you think? And I don't want to do that. This is empowering the various subcommittee chairs. So really, that's my update. Just going around, making sure everybody's good, doing the thing that all y'all are doing. Any questions for me on anything general? All right, that helps. Okay, so the next thing up, the next thing I want to do before we get into subcommittee reports, all right, is with Doris's term on CPAC ending, while she's agreed to stay on through September, her council member could reappoint somebody within 2 weeks' notice of just putting it on a city council agenda. So what I wanted to do as chair is to make a motion to go ahead and fill that leadership role. More importantly, while we still have her, because she can help facilitate the transition, not just there's so much knowledge transfer. When I say transition, it's the knowledge transfer of the historical value of Doris has been a member of the policy committee, I think, since it formed, and has been a chair. I think you took over as a chair once, Jerry. I think she took over from you, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so she's been that for a while. And what Doris has done, Jerry did a great job, but under Doris, we now have written policies and procedures that were actually passed and incorporated in our guidelines by city council. So she took it, Jerry did a great job of building it, but to that level. So while we have, Doris and we have Jerry and we have others, for me, that's a good time to have that knowledge transfer. So what I want to do is go ahead and make a motion. So I move to nominate Jamie, let me see. First one is I move to nominate Joe Kraus to be the new policy subcommittee chair effective June 7th, 2024. And the reason why I'm doing that for tomorrow, I want to say that and I'll reread this so somebody can second if they want to, is because I want Doris to be the policy chair for this meeting and give her update. That term wouldn't start effect till tomorrow. So let me reiterate. I move to nominate Joe Kraus to be the new policy subcommittee chair effective June 7th, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All abstentions, so ordered.
Okay, next. Harrison MacGyver has served admirably on the complaint subcommittee as the chair. He was our inaugural chair of the complaint subcommittee, and he has asked that he step down from the leadership role and move into a membership role. So he wants to stay on the subcommittee, but he no longer wants to be the chair. That was effective immediately. So in the meantime, Jamie's been filling that role. So I move to nominate Jamie Kahn to be the new complaint subcommittee chair effective immediately.
Is there a second?
I second it.
Moved and properly seconded. Discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Abstentions, so ordered.
Thank you, everybody. Okay, so having been voluntold and
came out too far.
wonderful leadership roles, let me move to the subcommittee reports. Now, all of you should have received the written reports. So hopefully you read those, digested those. So the first report is from the executive subcommittee. We don't have, we met for the first time. And just so you know, I've made it a point just for me in presiding over it. We're not conducting business. We're not making motions. We're not trying to be a shadow leadership group. This is basically designed so that the subcommittee chairs, we can bounce ideas off each other to strengthen, enhance. It's also to help get ideas for the agenda. And all of you are invited to participate. We have the people that are the members of the subcommittee, but like anything else, the public can show up. And so we did meet. It was very productive. We talked about our reports. We talked about just the logistics of what we do. And we threw ideas for each other. And that was really the scope of our meeting. I really have nothing to report out of it because that was whole intent, is not for us to come out making decisions or even making motions to bring to CPAC. That's not, for me, that's not what I wanted an executive subcommittee to do. This was just more of a working session. So you have any questions for me as the executive subcommittee chair? All right, perfect. Policies and procedures subcommittee, Doris.
Good evening. The policy subcommittee met on May 7th. And prior to that, we reviewed GL 30, which was authority to exercise alternatives to arrest. We submitted our comments to that general order on April 25th. And I believe Captain Cretella said that he would update us on what changes or how the department received those recommendations.
So we're still working on that. We've kind of gone behind schedule with some just operational needs that we had. So working on that, and then GO8 as well, which is fair and impartial policing. And hopefully by the next meeting, we'll have those two policies packaged together to present those changes to you.
Okay. And just to update us again, you said we submitted some previous recommendations to other policies, and at one of the meetings you advised us that those policies have not been incorporated in training, incorporated in the policies regarding training because there were some other things going on with the department. If you can reiterate that.
Let me circle back to you on that.
Okay.
I remember having the conversation. I'm not sure which policies they were that you guys gave the suggestions to that we published, but I'll follow up on that for you.
Yeah, I think you said that officers hadn't been trained on the update because there were some training issues involved. We also, at that meeting, had an overview of Power DMS, which is the portal that officers use to access general orders. And it's also the portal that the community used to access departmental policies. And while we were, reviewing Power BMS, we used, General Order, 8, which is fair and impartial policing. And doing that, Captain Cretella showed us how the, DMS is accessed, and I believe the only difference between what the public sees and what officer sees is the login page. But other than that, the information is the same on both ends.
Yeah, and the only other difference is that we are assigned tests if we have to take tests for different policies to make sure we reviewed it, or if there's a department survey. But besides that, the public wouldn't have access to that, but internally, that's all we have access to as well.
At that meeting also, we made a recommendation to the police department, as Paul stated earlier. Policy committee, we've reviewed probably about 20% of the general orders of the department. And as a result of reviewing those general orders, we've concluded that there need to be some work done. We found some errors in uniformity regarding the format of policies. I believe we asked the question at the last meeting whether or not there was a staff person assigned to make sure that the policies are uniform and that they contain all the components that policies and procedures should. And no one was identified to who would oversee that. We understand that there are subject matter folks in the department who provide update to policies, but no one is making sure that they're presented in a consistent manner. We found that other departments have a better format. And so one of the things that we're recommending as a result of our efforts is that CBT hires an independent professional entity that's specializing in helping public safety agencies update and develop written policy content that is uniform, coherent, accessible, and comply with state and federal laws. Also, that CPD's annual report include details on policies that have been reviewed by the department and the number of compliance audits that were conducted during the annual reporting period. Policies are important. They're the mechanism in which folks do what they do, why they do what they do, and understand the process and procedure. And then for the community as a way of holding folks accountable. So it's very important that policies, guidelines, general orders are clear and concise and uniform. One of the things we notice is that the general orders here are reflected numerically, which leaves a lot of room for policies to be misinterpreted, especially when they're relating policies. You might have, and we've identified that when we were doing the traffic general order, that there might have been a traffic general order that might have been number 22, but you go down number 44, there's another traffic policies. So they don't interrelate, and sometimes they don't refer to each other in the policies. So I can imagine it's hard for officers, if there's some confusion in duties, to refer back to a policy to make sure that they're covering all the subject matters that they need to cover in a particular policy. So that's important. You know, we were diligent, well, we are diligent in going through the policies and pulling out things that stand out to us. So we don't take this recommendation lightly. I think the police department does a great job in doing what they do. We're considered one of the best in the country. So I think our policy should reflect that as well.
You want me to give a response? I could turn over to Captain McLaughlin. So there's a lot to unpack there. In terms of hiring an outside entity, we actually have SPO Dave Plesich, who is assigned to policy. He's our CLIA manager, and he's the one that's making sure that everything is up to date. We did have a transition moving from Sergeant Dubose to SPO Plesich. They had to reallocate a sergeant billet. It doesn't reflect on, sergeant doesn't mean that position. SPO Plesich is well qualified. He's an attorney, so he's taken that transition. So we are not gonna look to hire an outside agency because we are CLIA certified. We have that dedicated person internally. When you talk about referencing other policies within a policy, that is something we acknowledge that we need to work on. I know when you talk about GO 28, which is constitutional issues in policing, it should also reference GO 8, which is fair and impartial policing, and we are lacking that. So that is something that we are definitely going to work on in the future. Captain, can you just, I know you guys talked about the alphabetizing versus the numeric and what you guys researched. So since he's taking over, I don't want to start that new project. So I'm kind of slowly transitioning, but still I want to be active as, you know, to keep this going with the momentum we have.
Yeah, we looked into that, but in terms of completely restructuring our policies and how they're laid out, we found that might be more confusing for the officers that use it on a daily basis. However, your points about cross-referencing are very well taken, and we are lacking in that department, and we're going to put work into that, as well as going through and making sure that the policies are consistent in format. You can go through 3 or 4 different policies and they may not look the same, be laid out the same. They should be. And that's something that we're going to be actively working on since I'm taking over. And again, back to what we said earlier, that I used to be in policies and procedures. This is very much an interest of mine, and I like things to look the same. I like things to be easy to use. So we're going to be putting a lot of focus on that. We're going to have a lot of work for less. I, and Lieutenant Bailey, who's on the call, actually have started or continue to meet weekly in terms of what needs to be updated. And those recommendations were discussed as recently as today. And we are definitely looking to see how we can fast track changing formats to be more user friendly. As well as the way our page is laid out on the website for the front facing, how you log in, you go straight to Power DMS, and then it's kind of the long list of all of our numbered policies. We're looking to see if there's a way to streamline that so that we can perhaps group policies similar to other agencies, where if you want to know about something related to traffic, you could see which ones are traffic related. You know, maybe we won't call them all traffic and then traffic collisions, and they'd be under the T's. But we're working on trying to figure out a way to make it, if you want to see something about traffic, those policies would be listed together in links. So if you just wanted to know about that, you could click on those and go directly to it versus, well, let me look through these 80 something policies and try and find the one I want based on the names, as well as cross-referencing them within themselves. So everything you're saying is being received, and we're going to do as much as possible to improve ourselves. There's always room for improvement.
One of the other things I like to mention is that Power DMS, and I think I mentioned this at our meeting, that Power DMS and Lexapro, which is a policy. They help departments create and monitor policies. They merged. So it might not be that you have to hire anyone. It might be maybe just making that connection and having them look at our policies and see what, you know, how we can improve on that.
Yes, ma'am. Great idea. Thank you.
That ends my report.
Thank you. Jerry.
So, the suggestions, in terms of changing format and accessibility had to do as much with the ability of the policies to be used by the officers as it did the community. And I would suggest, perhaps the new chair of the policy committee, kind of work with you guys as you make those changes, all right, so we can see that progress going forward. And I think it would be important also for the ERNA committee and communications committee to be able to note that those changes are being made in response to, all right, some of the observations made by CPAC. The ERNA report was very critical about CPAC don't do nothing, all right? And what you just described, and I know Tony frequently talks about the value of the input and interaction, but there's no public acknowledgement of that, no awareness of that. And hopefully the changes that you make will also make the department more transparent to those folks who would be your critics.
Yes. Any other questions or comments for the policy subcommittee? Thank you very much. And tomorrow the torch is passed, so pretty bold agenda.
Looking forward to it.
Excellent.
Schedule the meeting.
All right, next, the complaint review subcommittee.
Yes, thank you. Appreciate the confidence everyone has in me to take over, and thank you for Harrison for his service. Harrison's still staying on the subcommittee, and right now we have Harrison, myself, and Philip. And if you're interested, let me know. We have one of them. Look forward to continue working with Captain Gratella and now Captain McLaughlin and Lieutenant Hill as well. We submitted a written report, but we have not met since I reported to the group on April 4th at our full CPAC meeting. We didn't have any business at that time, but since our April full CPAC meeting, as most should know, the 2023 internal affairs report has come out. I know Paul circulated that. If you have not read that, it's available. Our committee decided to review that individually and not conduct a meeting to talk about what's written. We were reading it ourselves, and now that we'll reestablish it. If we need to meet and talk about this, we will. But what I have talked to Paul about this, and because we have not met, we haven't had a chance to talk about this at committee. Our thought was, since our subcommittee actually is less than a year old, and we're just getting going, we should perhaps start with reviewing one summary, a sample of an upheld complaint. And that motion's not going to come from committee because we have not met, but we talk about it here and decide what CPAC wants to do. But as we've discussed in the past, our interest in analyzing the data and that we would receive samples of summaries of upheld cases, that's where we were going to start. And being it's the first time for the department, I don't know when we'll be able to report back to you, the full committee on that. It may be at least a meeting, maybe two, maybe 2 meetings from now, just when we get in sync with the captain and Lieutenant Bailey on that. But written reports been submitted. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. And if Paul, I don't know how you want to handle that motion. If you want me to make the motion.
That's your.
Again, it's not coming from the committee, so we'll all vote on it, but I make a motion for the complaint subcommittee to review one summary sample upheld complaint case from the.
Is there a second?
Ms. Harrison, I'll second.
Okay, well, I've got a second. Any discussion?
Would it be a redacted one, or what are we talking about?
But I don't, we got to work all that out. I mean, it's a summary. That's what it is. It's a summary given to us by the Internal Affairs Office.
I thought we had this discussion at our last meeting, and
What he's
terribly receptive to
so
this.
what I would say to you is from my perspective, we don't know what we don't know. And I think there's a lot of debate over, is it going to contain this? Is it not going to contain it? We don't know what it's going to contain. City council says you can request it. So I think what Jamie's doing is saying that's going to be the working product is take, they're not asking for a specific instance. Okay, we know you got 15 motor vehicle stops and you've had 20 complaints. We want a case from there to review. He's saying to get a sample so that there's a general understanding of what this summary would look like. What does it look like redacted? What does it contain? And is it something they can even, is it something they can even work with? Because if it's not something they can work with, they'll have to act accordingly. But Jamie, I think that's what your subcommittee's looking for.
Correct. We're just starting the process.
In the
Are you going to get a report with the officers' names and?
No. We already established that. This is you're not entitled, our guidelines don't entitle that.
Okay.
This is to review the process and then what the subcommittee, what questions come from it. If you're getting an overarching number of motor vehicle stop complaints in a certain geographical location, that may be the subcommittee turns around and says, listen, you've had 50 of them in the past 2 months in that area. We want to see a sample of one of those complaints. So I think we don't know what we don't know on what it's going to look like. And from there, they can determine what's its value and what they can do is, because what are you reviewing other than general statistics? And statistics can stay anything. That's what that point is, right, Jamie?
Thank you.
All right, so as I understand your motion, you're making a motion to review, but that's not really the gist of your motion. You really want to make a motion requesting that the police department provide you such a summary.
Correct.
Is that right?
Did I not say that? I don't know.
I didn't hear that, so I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, we're making a request to review a sample summary of an upheld complaint case, if I didn't say that. Got it.
And the reason for that is the city council has said that we can request it as the body CPAC can request that, but we need to request. So this is something we need to request. It's not, Jamie just picks up, sends an email and says, hey, shoot one over. But this needs to be
our guidelines.
Needs to be
CPAC can make a request. If it moves, it goes to the chair. I make the request just because it's one line of communication. I make a request, it comes back, it's handed to CPAC because our guidelines do not mandate a complaint subcommittee. It recommends it. And in our case, we did create a subcommittee. So we've decided that'll be given to them when we want them to make the motions to bring it and we're going to give it to them. And that's part of their working product, right? In this case, the truth is any member can request it, right? And CPAC can vote on it. So Jamie's doing that, even though he's the policy, he's the complaint subcommittee chair. That subcommittee didn't make a motion to do this. This is him doing as leader, just a member to be able to take back to his subcommittee.
That's right.
Is this just in it, sort of the case of their choosing, so to speak, are there any, like you say, we don't know what we don't know. So I don't know, we would know what to ask for is it just one or is it a sampling? Is it 4 or 5?
So what obviously this has been a work, I believe, since November. We've had a bunch of discussions. So what it's going to be is a summary of a sustained case to where the officer found that they violated a policy. So it'd be up to our choosing. In terms of redactions, what we're looking at just taking out as personal identifiers, the officer's name, maybe the complainant's name, the victim's name, however you want to say it, any addresses or anything that you would see. So you would get the summary of the allegation, the officer was rude. What does rude mean? So our investigation, hey, the officer was short with me. They might have raised their voice and they didn't explain why I was getting the traffic citation and kind of the follow through with that. Right.
Okay.
But nothing that should be identifiable, right? We're not here. We'll repeat every time we say it. We're not an oversight committee. We're here to help provide a little bit of transparency and say, we see anomalies and complaints. We see a problem and we'd like to better understand it because our job is to educate the public. So if we can go a little bit further than a statistic, you're not getting into the name or the HR folder, but you're getting enough details of a complaint, that was upheld to see their process. And so it's a little bit more than what we had, right?
And we reviewed the statistics at our March meeting. which I reported on in April. So this is the next logical step.
All right, any other questions or comments for Jamie who made the motion? Yeah.
Well, we might want to consider, perhaps one from each class. Or at least the highest classes, which is A, I believe.
Okay.
The fact that an officer had a dirty car, I don't really care about, that's not, I want to see something more of substance with the interaction with the public.
Sure. And, I don't know who's gonna interact with the department on this, whether it be me or you, but I think we can work those out.
I'll make the formal request, and then if Tony or Pat want to directly, they can talk. I mean, there's no rules that they don't talk to each other.
My idea is to make one request, understand the format, understand the process. Let's see the result we get, and then we can go from there, Philip, in the future.
Okay, any other further discussion? All right, so the motion on the table is for CPAC to request of the police department and a sample upheld complaint.
Properly redacted.
I don't need, I'm not gonna say that because that's part of their job, not mine. So they know that. A sample of the complaint. That's right.
Summary.
Okay. All in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Guys have it. Tony, I'm formally making the request to you. You give me a timeline on when I can receive it.
Not to complicate things. That's why I have Steve here. I think you have to make it to the chief of police. I'll start working on,
I can do that, but the guidelines don't say that, but that's fine.
I thought there was something in there. I'm,
100% no, it doesn't go to the chief.
I'll start working on it, but yeah, if
Steve, can you clarify for me? But I don't think it went to the chief of police, but if you want it to, I'm fine with that.
I'd have to look at the guidelines more carefully, but I think it can be the chief or his designee. So, I mean, if you make it in the open meeting, I think we'll address it.
Okay. All right. And just, so let's say the chief gave you the blessing in the world. What kind of time frame are we looking at?
give me 30 days. Because there's.
Can we compromise on 15?
Well, there's a delivery method, so we've got to figure some things out internally.
What's the normal rule on FOIA request for timeline?
We acknowledge.
Steve, what's the normal FOIA request timeline?
Now, that's a lot longer. It's actually 10 days to give an answer as to whether or not we have the record and intend to produce it. And then we have another 30 days after that to actually produce the record. So this will be much quicker than that.
Well, we wouldn't do the 10 days anyway, because we're not asking for a specific record. So you don't have to see it. So 30 days.
Which I said was fair. See, Paul, we're gonna
See, when you get a FOIA request, that's kind of a confrontation, a serial relationship. We thought we were pals, but okay. Okay, so what we would say is a deadline of 30 days. He can always under promise and over deliver. Remember to live. All right, Jamie, anything else for you?
That's it. Thank you.
Okay. Dave, ERA audit.
Yeah, so I don't think I really have too much new to report here. We've now had 2 formal meetings. And what we've really come down to, and what we've discussed, is that of all of the CPAC ERA recommendations, all of them except one really fall under communication subcommittee. And so Tommy and I have met. I've offered to even be a member on the communication subcommittee because I realize it's a lot of lifting and a lot of really quality, good work that needs to be done. So it'd be fun to be involved in that. But the one big outlier, I think everybody knows the big outlier for CPAC and for the ERA is the vehicle stops. And so with the help of Jill and others, I have a meeting, I believe it's next Tuesday, the 11th, both with David Crosby and also Captain Bruder. And I don't know, data perspective, you were talking about, you would love to attend as well. But you know, it's what we really want to do right now. Joe can't attend as another representative. Jerry, I think if you can make it, I know you said you're holding the time. Let's just go ahead and plan if you can make it. If not, 10 to 11 was it 11 to 12? I think it is 10 to 11. 10 to 11. Okay. On the 11th. And really, like I've said before, I believe CPD has the data. We've seen some of the reports Captain Bruder's put out in the past. And it's really just gonna make sure we can get as much of that data presented, quite similar to a lot of the other reports. Gary sent me, as probably lots of you know, he likes to send lots of additional information. There's vehicle stops, and now we've seen other departments across country, and I'm just saying this, I'm not saying I'm gonna be asking for this right now, but it's not just vehicle stops, but it's also people stops, people walking down the street and stops, right? And make sure we have records of that and understanding that as well. Really not too much difference between a vehicle stop and randomly stopping people in the street, so it's things like that, you know, we're gonna tackle what the ERA says, and then I think further on down the road, we just want to make sure that we continue to have good data and good reporting as well, so.
For those of you that don't know, CPD is probably ahead of the game, probably far greater than most. They don't have a generic stop and frisk. They have to have, if they stop you for more than saying, hello, how are you? If they stop you for a pretext stop, even if you're walking down the street, they've got to do a contact card. So there's no such thing as I encountered a police officer and it's not documented anywhere. That's disciplinary when that happens. So they're way, I mean, you know, I don't listen to this how they do it, but I know the policy as it stands and how it's communicated out. Every time they stop and talk to somebody who's suspicious, there's a contact card because you're not supposed to just do it for no reason. So they've taken it, and I think it's been enhanced even further in the past year or so. So, I mean, you're right.
Yeah, it's very impressive, and I think I've seen lots of national rankings, and Charleston is definitely way above average. So that's really it. I think that's all I have. It's, you know, from then getting this information, it's all about communication, right? So we just gotta, all of us just have to link through. I'm not gonna steal your thunder, but Tommy and his committee.
Any questions for Dave? Tommy, you're up.
Yeah.
Communications Subcommittee.
Of course, yeah, thank you. So yeah, we're looking to get this started and off the ground, hopefully in the next month. We'd like to get our first meeting scheduled. Before that, I would like to get a role of who would like to be on that. I know Dave, I would love to have you on it, 'cause obviously there's gonna be a lot of heavy lifting right off the bat, taking your recommendations and getting them out to the public and communicating that. But would love to get some other people who may be interested on the subcommittee, so we can, you know, harness each other's ideas and go forward there. So
I'm gonna, even though my policy is not to be on them because I was the communications chair until I took over this, I'll join for a period of time until you need me to
I
drop.
think that would be, yeah, very helpful. So anyone else who would to join?
You're gonna be a member, right?
I've already reached out.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah. I know. This is what we have.
I knew you were, just like to point at you anyway.
A good start, but yeah, as I said, Dave sent over a bunch of really good information that I'm looking forward to getting off the floor. And then also I met Jerome Smalls at the open house, and killer guy. He seems like amazing, and I'm really looking forward to working with him as well. I got his card, and I think he'll be a great resource for us. Has the best attitude ever.
Guys, include him as much as you can.
Yeah.
You know, the guy's full of energy, and the more he's educated as well. So take advantage of that. Worst thing you say is no.
Yeah.
Okay, but if you don't ask. But I want y'all as a communication subcommittee. So we're talking about communication strategy and everything else. To me, one of the many glaring errors, it's not your fault, but it's like, go into their website right now. I mean, it's busted. I mean, it's, you know, if you look up ranks, if you look up contact information, you look up assignments. It's like, you know, this is the public facing, when I've encountered, if I encounter Lieutenant Gibson in the field, there's a lot of people that they'll go on to the police department and want to look up his background and understand who they were talking to, and they're going to be impressed if they know, but pretty outdated. And so I know, don't just limit us to the marketing side of it. They've got some things in place that they definitely, you're using our feedback, right? We don't tell them what to do, but areas that, you know, and then help them, you know, based on your knowledge of the public, is they're not, you know, they're good at marketing, but they're not marketing gurus. Help them to prioritize some of these efforts and really don't let them, you know, don't focus on efforts that really get no traction, right? That nobody cares about that. It's those important things. So great. Any questions for Tommy? he needs volunteers, so please reach out to him offline. You know, we all love to, nobody loves to talk as much as I do. That's why I volunteered first. Yeah, Jerry.
That's a commercial, like, all of us belong on the communication subcommittee, because part of our job is to communicate with the community. What you need to give, the chair is feedback in terms of what folks think that they want to hear about, right? What's the best way of getting that information to them? Like, everybody should be giving you something,
Sure.
whether or not we're on the committee or not.
Yeah, and to echo that, I know Dave was having a conversation with, was it a friend or a relative?
Just a friend who said, you need to talk to my sister, and it was just an amazing conversation. I mean, people out there want to know more about the police. They don't know how, they don't even know like there's a website, right? So we have to help, get out there and just talk to people, but then also just make them aware that whatever they're concerned about probably is already covered,
Sure.
right?
Just bring it up.
Probably out there.
And I know one of the things you highlighted that she was wondering was like school resource officers,
I
like what's
can't
going on in the
believe-
schools? Is there like, what are they finding drugs, guns? Like, just, I'm looking forward to digging into
That's all I
that
just wanted to
more.
know about. I was trying to talk about all these other things. Shows. It's our kids, it's school
Yeah,
resource officers. and,
Absolutely.
I want to know
And
more about that.
everybody
And
brings,
Jesus,
that's a good example. Bring
Bring
those
those
concerns because he brought it up.
Yeah.
And now we've got the guy, we've got a lieutenant in charge and it's being filmed.
I'm
And
gonna,
so,
as soon as I get home, I'm gonna tell her,
yeah, they can
Yeah.
watch the video
Website
of his
percent.
presentation.
Absolutely.
And, the other thing we can do is social media. We love pictures of police officers capturing alligators. That's wonderful. But hey, are they also announcing, can we get them to announce a CPAC meeting? Can we get them to announce different, not necessarily like, hey, do you know we have a website? Do you know that we have a police, like for my community, they claim there's crime on every house and every street. And I pull up the portal and I send them the link to the portal. And I go, guess what? Hadn't been a crime in here in a while. Here are the facts. And just doing different things like that to say, let's point to this. They've got a YouTube channel of all these videos that we know we've helped promote. Give them a schedule of, hey, periodically on your social media, why don't you post that? Here's a video. Did you know that the King Street changes? Bam, do this. Use of force. If you're curious, let it be educational other than just entertainment, right? And get to know you. It can be used for both.
Yeah.
And so we can provide that type of feedback. Great. Any questions or concerns? All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Well, that was a great segue. We have the king of SROs.
That's right.
And I think your office is across the street from the house.
Well, first off, thanks for, I talk a little bit about the schools. I'll kind of give you a bit of an overview of what our guys do, kind of numbers of, officers we have in schools that we work through. And then obviously, if you guys have any questions for me after, it's fine. I just took over this unit, back in mid-September. So this is, the end of pretty much my first year. I mean, I stepped in right at the beginning of it. We have 35 officers that are in our unit, on the 36th. Basically, we cover 54 schools throughout the Charleston area. It's a continuing problem, right? I never speak to it. But I'll work on it. So we do have 54 schools that we cover. When I look at this job, and the way I approach it and the way I think about it is, I have 3 kids and, to me, I take this job very seriously because the way I look at it, what's more important than the safety of our kids, so I try to, make sure that when in dealing with my officers and the officers that work in schools, that's the mentality that they have and they go into school every day with, to me, there's nothing more than the safety of our kids. So, that's kind of an expectation I have for them. We have officers in every high school that we have of our 54, every high school we have an officer in. We have the majority of middle schools. And then we also have what we call an SSRT unit. It's a response unit. It's a school security response unit. Basically what they do is they have specific schools that they're also assigned to. Most of them are only assigned to two schools. So it's not like they have a lot of schools. It's either 2 or sometimes 3 if they have really ones that are either small or very close together, or they'll have more than that. So they basically hit some of the schools that there is not an SRO in every day. We have 20 schools, 20 SROs, that we have in the schools every day. So 20 schools that have one, every day. So, some of the things that I kind of expect of them, the biggest thing is to be involved. I want them in there. I want them being visible. I want them talking to people. I want them talking to kids. I want them helping out with the admin stuff. Some of them, a lot of them coaches, several of them coach in high school. Some of them teach classes. We have a guy that teaches a class in Spanish. We have a guy that teaches a class in medical, TAC med, like basically tourniquet application and stuff like that. So we have officers that actually teach a little bit in the schools as well. Definitely assist in some of the sporting events and stuff like that. So that's something that I expect of them. Also, the training aspect of it all, I expect them to be present and involved in our training that we do. We do quarterly training. It's in addition to what the police department does for everybody. Usually we focus a lot, obviously, on, active shooter responses and, the kind of things that are more specific to schools and stuff like that. So, and then, the other thing that we've done lately over the past, I'd say 5 years or so that we're kind of going to is looking at, and I know you mentioned it, the alternative to arrest. Like in our schools, when we're talking about dealing with juveniles, the vast majority of the kids that are in our schools are juveniles, right? So what can we do in lieu of making an arrest every time? Because we used to have like a disorderly a disturbing school statute where, it's pretty vague, but there's a lot of things you can do in school to get arrested for disturbing school. And then, you're putting through the family court system. And, we worked on it, this is back way before me. We worked on, a way to kind of look at some alternatives to that. So what we kind of do now is, anytime we have an incident in school, we sit down with either our SRO, depending on the incident level, or what it is, either our SRO is going to sit down with the school admin, or our SRO supervisor, or myself. We'll sit down with the school admins and see, like, what do we have? And then, what direction do we want to go as far as disciplinary action goes? And we're talking anything from the school doing, disciplinary action to, is this something that, requires police attention where somebody might be arrested and put in family court? All the way up into something, is this a threat that we need to call the FBI to talk? So there's a large range of things that we're looking at, when we do that. So we do those threat assessments, and we, every time that we have an incident in the school, whether it be something from, a fight that occurs, which is, and the majority of our stuff is usually assaults, amongst the kids, all the way to maybe a threat that was made, or, marijuana or something, or drugs in the school. And then the biggest part of that is, always complicated, is we want to remain consistent, because we don't want to deal with, we don't want to have one school doing things differently than another school. And that's difficult to do, because, a lot of your school admins, some of them are, say, more aggressive, like, I want this guy locked up, I want this guy locked up. And then others are, I want to give him a break, I want to give him a break. And it's not consistent. So it's very important for us to do that, where, we have a specific way that we do things. And, and a lot of it is, let's say, an assault out there as an example. Right? Is there an injury? Have we talked to the parents, and does anyone want to press charges on this? Was there more than 2-on-1 or something like that? And then also, have we had a disciplinary issue with somebody in the past? And then that will determine whether or not we're going to let the school determine the discipline, or whether we're going to take police action and go through family. So the big thing there is, and I talk about this with my supervisors all the time, is that's got to remain consistent. Like, regardless of where we are or what the situation is, we want to make sure that everything is done the same way, that we stick to a playbook to make sure that we keep it consistent. That's really important for us. I heard you mention earlier about, like, what we're seeing in the schools, and, I sit through, we'll have meetings with other SRO supervisors and stuff, CCSD and all these people here. And it is different, you know, all over the place. I mean, we're very fortunate, I think, in the city of Charleston. I mean, since I've been here in early September, we haven't had a gun covered. You know, we did have an incident where, you know, close by to a school, there was a foot pursuit, we ended up with a gun, but that was, you know, unrelated to school. We don't, you know, we're also not naive enough to think we're doing this so good that there's no guns ever going into our schools. You know, but, you know, I mean, it is something that, you know, we take very seriously. Every day, we want to keep that, you know, where it is. We do get our school friends, we do get people, you know, kids, I mean, kids are always kids, and so, you know, every once in a while, somebody says something that, you know, we have to do a threat assessment on, and, you know, most of the time when we do have those threat assessments, we sit down and we talk to the parents, and, you know, we don't feel that there was this isn't something that, you know, was a planned action or anything. It's just a kid that got upset and said something, you know, we feel pretty good about where we are. A lot of those situations, we would go to the school and say, you know, whatever your disciplinary matrix is there, we're okay with it. And we do that on purpose because we're not in the business of, you know, putting juveniles in school in the system and family court if we don't have to. That being said, there's times where we'll have something a little bit more severe where, you know, say a serious assault where somebody gets hurt, or, you know, multiple kids assaulting one other kid or something like that. And then we'll kind of, you know, that's a situation where we may have to go a little further with, you know, where we are family court. Drugs is the same way, you know, I mean, obviously there's some drugs, I mean, you're going, if you're in possession of cocaine or something, you're going, you know, you're going to end up in family court. However, you know, we are a little bit, when we're talking about kids, and, you know, we do a lot of looking at, you know, your record, and I don't want to say record, we look at your performance in school and your disciplinary what's in school and stuff like that. And if something comes up and, you know, it's a small amount of marijuana or something found on a kid in the school, then we still have the option to say, okay, we can handle this through the school discipline. We'll take custody of marijuana, but it is also something that we look at and say, okay, if this happens again, it's a different story, because, you know, that's kind of the matrix that we set up and the way we do it. So, again, you know, we have 20 officers in the schools right now. What we do every year is we kind of take a look at it and see where we are, and, you know, whether or not we need to make some moves as far as, you know, all right, well, a good example is right now, the early college is a school downtown that's kind of getting a little bit bigger. And we may have to move somebody over there a little bit more permanently, just because of the numbers of kids that are going to be there. So we kind of assess that, you know, what kind of things are we seeing in the schools? And then, you know, well, do we have our people in the right places? We kind of assess and do that every year. We're actually in the process of doing that right now, for the 24-25 school.
Question. In the high schools, are you seeing or hearing of any gang infiltration or gang activity?
So
I know we get gangs in town.
yeah, well, you know, I mean, a lot of times what we have is you have groups, you know, it's a group from, you know, an area, you know, and everybody, sometimes you look at gangs, what was the gangs? In a neighborhood group, is it, you know, when you think of traditional gang type stuff, it's a little bit different. So, yeah, I think for us, what we usually see is a lot more of that, where it's, you know, a group from that lives over here is having some kind of feud or issue with a group that lives over or stays over here, and that kind of thing. You know, that's something that we talk about a lot as far as keeping our admins and our administrations advised of when we got things like that, because you know, they're going to see it more than our SROs. I mean, your teachers, your admins, you know, your counselor, those people are going to see it, you know, more probably than we do. So that is something we kind of, we were just talking about that in Burke not too long ago, where, you know, we're just kind of advising them of, hey, you know, this is what we've had going. You know, it's something to keep an eye out and make sure that if you see anything, you know, keep our SRO involved in that kind of thing.
Do you try to keep SROs in the same school year after year after year?
So, yeah, you know, I mean, we always look at it, but yeah, essentially we try to, yes. Sometimes we want to make moves because, you know, when we have an SRO that, you know, is in a spot for a long time and becomes kind of complacent, sometimes you want to And then sometimes you also have needs, like if you have a school that is, you have busier, you have a, busier, amount of workload. I may want to get somebody over there that I'm a little bit more comfortable with, that's comfortable dealing with issues and that kind of thing. So we do move them, but for the most part, we keep them where they are because they really do. And this is something that I realized when I got over here, they really do like take ownership of that school. I mean, the teachers consider them one of the staff over there. They're, if I call them up and say, hey, we had somebody call out sick on, in John's Island somewhere, and I got to move you today. It's like, oh man, I got to leave my school. I mean, it feels like, they take ownership there. So that's why we do keep.
Right.
Do you also have ownership of the buses? I've
So-
heard several problems on buses.
So we do deal with the buses a little bit, and we do have problems with the buses. I've dealt with them, several times where, you have your fights on the bus, you have, damage, like we dealt with some damage to the buses. Kids that are jumping off the bus at the wrong stop and that kind of stuff. So, our SROs, we're out there usually until the end of when the buses have dropped everybody off, usually about 4 o'clock. So we do kind of split the way we do our shift. You'll do like a 7 to 3, and then we'll do an 8 to 4 group, specifically for that reason. So if something happens on a bus, we still have SROs around. I mean, we're not always, a lot of times the patrol officers are the first ones to get there if something happens on a bus. But a lot of times we know the kids a lot more. So, we're trying to keep them available so they can go and help out with something like that.
What's your connection with General Patrol in it? Let's say there was an incident in the home, domestic violence, something happened, there was an arrest in the home. Do they connect to you and your team to say, hey, listen, I know this happened. Can you reach out, make sure he's okay? Almost like a victim's advocate?
Yeah, we get that a lot. And it's everything from something like that to, like I was saying earlier, where you may be having, like, hey, we had a fight last night and both of these guys go to the same school, and that kind of thing. So there is a lot of that. And we're always following up with that. It usually comes directly to the SRLs because that's a good thing. Like when you go back to talking about having the same person in the same school, the patrol officers know if something happens in West Ashley High School, Clyde King's my guy. Yeah, he's been there forever. Same thing as, Thomas Bedell. Those are the two guys that are there. So that's part of why we keep that the same way as well, because so the patrol officers, even if it's something a little bit more informal, where it's just like, hey, keep an eye on this because, it looks weird or something like that. There's been some kind of, something's wrong between these two people. I know they go together to school all the time. They can call those SROs because they know which ones are there. And that's one of the big reasons we don't move them too.
What other questions do you have for Lieutenant Moore?
Where do your SROs typically come from? Patrol, what's the career path look like?
So yeah, a lot of them come from patrol, and it's funny because when I get over there, a lot of them like it and they stay there. It's when I came over from the training division, which was basically your brand new guys, and then you get over here, and I'm in a spot where these guys have been around a long time. I mean, it's probably one of our most senior, probably is our most senior unit in the entire police. So, a lot of them, they get into school and they take ownership of it and they never want to leave. Many of them always poking them like, hey, you want to put in for the promotion, list and stuff. And some of them are like, no, I like this. I like what they have.
What do they do during the summer?
So we have Camp Hope, which is the biggest thing that we do, which is 3 different camps. We have one in West Ashley, one downtown, and one on John's Island. And we assign officers to that camp, and their whole job is just to run that camp. Everything from organizing the activities to being there every day. That's pretty much what most of them do. And then we have another group of our SSRT guys, which again is our response unit guys. They're still out there for schools that are open for either summer school or a lot of the church schools or smaller schools. They'll have camps. So they still wander around and roam and hit those places.
Do y'all cover private schools as well?
Yeah, a lot of them. And a lot of the private schools are in our SSRT clusters. All of our SROs are in CCSD schools. But private schools, are in our clusters, and they all.
So the CCSD, I understand, hired some supplemental officers for security. And in some of the schools, they are involved in doing restorative practices.
Right.
So how are your guys interfacing with those private
Right.
people and the schools where they're doing the restorative practices?
Right, so first off, there's not too many of them. They're still kind of starting that program where, and basically what this is, if everyone's not familiar, is if we have a school that we do not have a specific SRO in every day, CCSD or other, they're going out and they're putting, a lot of times retired officers that are in there, that can act as an SRO. They don't work for us, they're probably, they work there, but we work with them. One of the things that we did, right after I got there, and I think they were doing it before, but I'm not positive, was we invited them to come to our training sessions. Because we want them to know what we do. And we also want our guys to recognize them, and know who they are. So, if something does happen, we're not running into a situation where we don't, I know there's a guy in there, but I don't know who he is type thing. So that was kind of really important.
Are they in uniform?
So, yes.
Okay.
And they're it's basically like a private security, but a lot of them have, it's funny because, when we go through some of this stuff and you're talking to, people, this guy, I retired from, NYPD, after 20 years, came down here and got bored, and here I am, that kind of thing. So it was interesting for us because we actually had a lot of their perspective as well from where they come from, and then also from what their new position is. And how we can kind of relate to that. It's pretty good. I mean, it's a program that I think, just kind of started, so there's not too many of them. But it really does, it is something that, for us is important that we work with them because something happens, we're on the same side, we all, we want to know who they are.
Thanks. All right, any other questions?
Thank you.
So I'll give you a quick warning. If you live in West Ashley, don't plan on leaving anytime soon.
So bad at talking loud.
Traffic is completely backed up.
What?
Huh?
Accident?
No. Possibly a tragedy, but so traffic is completely shut down for right now. Yeah, you guys all know, but yeah, but it doesn't. But the city streets are screwed. But yeah.
Directions. Yeah, right there past Dobbin there, Southern Brews, past Dobbin Road. Where the Cattle Creek is, where the Southern Brews is.
Oh no, right before you get to where I live, right past where right near the Clemson
extension.
Right before Clemson.
It's close to me and Dave.
It's closed in both.
We're not going home.
60 minutes.
All right, I know we're going a little bit longer, but that was excellent. I do appreciate it. Okay, Jill, you're up.
Yep, I'll be brief. So I just wanted to update everyone. We are planning to present assessment of the review and assessment of the assessment at the next Committee on Public Safety meeting, which is going to be the 17th. So not next Monday, but the Monday following. That's at 2 p.m. We'll be giving our presentation on our next steps. You can come physically to the meeting if you'd like, or you can watch online. It'll be posted via Zoom, just like we are here. Beyond that, the only other thing I wanted to highlight is I think everyone here should have received communications from me regarding the opportunity to have your portraits made. I did see several people sign up for that. We have an excellent professional photographer that works with the CPD. And so you'll have the backdrop with the American flag, and it'll be a very, very nice photo that we will have just to reference you properly and our external public facing reports for your service and your commitment. And we'll also make sure that you have a copy of it as well. So if anybody would like me to send the link to sign up for those slots, we're starting them, I believe, it's later in this month. I think it's the 18th. Yeah. There's several different options. They're from 4 to 6. So we have lots of slots available. And if you cannot attend one of those sessions, and it's actually out of Beast Ferry, so you have to drive out to the professional lab where these are done. let me know and I can work with our photographer to get you another option. We do have at least one person that's gonna be working with another time, but yeah, get your picture taken or get it redone if it's been a while.
Let me tell you, that's
yeah.
good for your, if you're still out there on LinkedIn, that's been my LinkedIn profile. My wife is telling me I need to get a new one because I don't look like that anymore. I use it for my Zoom profile for work, everything I do, that's like, I love it, because that just,
Yeah. It's a really nice one. So if you need the link again, or you want to schedule another time, please reach out, but thank you to those that have scheduled and we'll get those made for you.
Paul, can I make a motion to make it mandatory? Because
We
we
all
do
had to have it.
reports, we
Yeah.
can reference pictures, we only have
Yeah.
so many, so if you could encourage everyone to CPAC to please get it done.
you can negotiate that based on your 30 day.
If I deliver on time, I'm good.
They filtered that, well, they didn't filter mine because they left 3 chin zones.
That's it for me.
But it's really nice, and Michelle's wonderful, make fun of her because she's funny, got a good nature, I mean, that's her job, she takes pictures, great job. Okay, Captain Mitchell, I know you're online, right?
Yeah, she's still with us.
Yes, I'm here.
All right, your turn.
Well, basically, I just want to thank everyone that came out for open house. That was a success, and who all participated in Citizens Academy. Graduation was last week. We had a great time with that class, and I sent some updates via email. We'll be with Charleston Progressive Academy Middle School for their Bridge the Gap on the 7th. And then, like we said early in the meeting, the Youth Citizen Academy will start on the 11th. And we have Coffee with a Cop at Eggs Up Grill. That's in West Ashley Circle. So if you live in that area, please invite your neighbors to come out. We all will be there and they can ask any questions that they may have. That's all I have.
Thank you. When Captain Mitchell sends these updates out, a lot of y'all are on Facebook, you belong to communities. I mean, I go into my Carolina Bay and I post it everywhere. Really just make sure your community groups are getting these, right? Shouldn't end with us because, it is what it is. But so the more the merrier. I've been to a couple of these. I've been to the Coffee with a Cop. I showed up and, there's Dustin with his new beard at the time and just all these, it's a good event, but they get bored if they're just standing there amongst themselves. So I encourage people to go out there. All right. Those are the updates from the department. Did anybody else from the department have anything they want to give? Okay. Any new business to bring up? Any old business that we forgot to talk about? Hearing none at 7:08, is there a motion to adjourn?
Moved.
Okay, is there any opposition to this one? All right, we're adjourned.
No debate?
I've already adjourned. You can debate all
Good
you
night,
want.
everybody.